Good evening. Tonight, let's discuss Septima Poinsette Clark, born May 3rd, 1898, passed on December 15th, 1987, raised in Charleston, South Carolina. Septima Poinsette Clark pioneered the link between education and political organizing, especially political organizing aimed at gaining the right to vote. Literacy means liberation, she stressed, knowing that education was key to gaining political, economic, and social power. Long before SNCC's freedom schools, Clark was developing a grassroots citizenship education program that used everyday materials to think about big questions, from reading catalogs to writing on dry cleaner bags instead of chalkboards. Clark not only found creative ways to teach literacy, but also helped people become leaders. Don't ever think that everything went right. It didn't, she acknowledged. Many times there were failures, but we had to mull over those failures and work until we could get them ironed out. Clark was born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1898 to a mother who was fiercely proud and a father who was gentle and tolerant. Both recognized the importance of education, although they came from very different life experiences. Clark's father was formerly enslaved on the Poinsette plantation and would tell Clark about how, as a child, he would take his master's children to school and wait outside while they were in class. Her mother was raised in Haiti and was taught how to read and write at a young age. When they saw the conditions of Clark's grade school as compared to those that the white children of Charleston attended, they were enraged. And so, they sent her to a woman who taught neighborhood children in her home across the street. Clark eventually went on to attend the Avery Normal School in Charleston. Clark decided to become a teacher herself, seeing education as a tool to be put in the hands of the people to gain a better life. By 1916, Clark had received her teaching license and got a job on Johns Island off the coast of South Carolina. Black people were not permitted to teach in public schools in Charleston. Looking for ways to pass the time in the evening, Clark began teaching adult literacy on the island after school. She would have her students write stories about their daily lives and think critically about the world around them. Part 2 will be in the comments. Part 2. A few years later, Clark had a conversation with someone about the NAACP and joined, spurring her to move back to Charleston and take part in a successful campaign to change the policy that prevented black teachers from working in public schools. For a time after, she lived in Columbia, South Carolina, and worked at Booker T. Washington High School before returning to her hometown to care for her mother. She began teaching there, but she lost her teaching position in 1956 because of her affiliation with the NAACP. Clark then became the director of workshops at the Highlander Folk School founded by Miles Horton, which she had first visited in 1954. While at Highlander, Clark stayed connected to her teaching roots, developing the citizenship school curriculum she had begun developing on Johns Island. She encouraged one of her former students, Esau Jenkins, to start coming to workshops at Highlander. Jenkins had become a respected leader on Johns Island and had even run for the school board. Although the black community largely supported him, so few black people were registered to vote on Johns Island that Jenkins was defeated. Taking what he had learned from Highlander, Jenkins decided to take matters into his own hands and began a literacy effort on the bus he used to take tobacco workers and longshoremen to Charleston. With a seed grant from Highlander, Jenkins took his rolling school to the back of a grocery store on the island, which hid the school from the white community's gaze. By 1961, 37 citizenship schools had been established on the Sea Islands and nearby mainland. These students went on to start a low-income housing project, credit union, nursing home, and more within their communities. The citizenship schools eventually became part of the SCLC, and Clark moved to Atlanta, driving all over the Deep South to recruit folks to be citizenship school teachers. After her workshop at the Dorchester Cooperative Community Center in McIntosh, Georgia, participants would go back to their communities, start discussing problems in their towns, and organize their own citizenship classes. Clark believed in the power of literacy and nonviolent resistance, and she was interested in the work of the young activists. Like her good friend Ella Baker, Septima Clark bridged the gap between SNCC and an older generation in a way that few did, and her lifelong work in adult literacy and citizenship education helped pave the way for SNCC's organizing work, especially the Freedom Schools of Mississippi.
Planned 3 workshops. One was to be with school teachers, public school teachers, to see how they felt about integration, because the Supreme Court decision had just been rendered. The second workshop was to be with labor unions, to find out how the labor unions would support integration. And the third one was to be on the United Nations and find out what was going to be happening at the United Nations, which would have a meeting in San Francisco in '57. Well, I was made director of education at the Highlander Folk School that year, and Rosa Parks sent me a letter from Montgomery, Alabama, asking to get a scholarship. She was working with a youth group for the NAACP, and she wanted to be able to come into the August workshop, which had to do with the United Nations, and to see how she could get herself prepared to work better with the youth. And she further said that I would like to make a contribution that would help all people. So she came to the workshop in August 1955 and talked very little, was very shy. And at the close of, just before the close of the workshop, up in the dormitory one night, they were talking about how the Freedom Train came into Alabama, and Rosa told them what a hard time they had getting the Freedom Train into Alabama, because the train would not come if the people could not stand in line on a first-come, first-served basis. There could be no discrimination going into the cars to see the documents. And finally, she had a letter from Washington saying just that. And the school children were allowed to go into the train on a first-come, first-served basis.